What are the benefits to America of the Bitcoin strategy? Embrace Bitcoin, we own the 21st century. All the money, all the capital of the world is moving out of the 20th century. Every educated financier was educated in the 20th century. They were taught a bunch of bromides, a bunch of rules. All of those rules probably made sense in the 20th century. The way we fought World War II is not the way we fight World War III. Every military doctrine, every financial doctrine, it might have been right at one point. It's not right any longer. Trillions of dollars of capital is going to flow from those physical and financial assets into digital, into the Bitcoin network. Okay, you might say, well, I'm making a strong assertion. Bitcoin is the digital capital network. I'm not just the one making that assertion. The President of the United States made that assertion last week. Explained by David Sachs on Friday night. He said, Bitcoin is the only crypto asset that is truly decentralized. It is special. Maybe in the future there might be some other digital capital. The U.S. government doesn't recognize any other digital capital, nor do we. And that's because 99% of the power in the crypto ecosystem is in the Bitcoin network. If you want to own cyberspace and own the future, you need to own it. Embrace Bitcoin and strengthen the dollar. We have the chance to establish, own, and control the global digital capital network. That is Bitcoin. We can back the US dollar with Bitcoin reserves, the only monetary asset that is competitive to the dollar. If I need a liquid fungible asset to capitalize a company or an institution, it's not real estate, it's not natural gas, it's not art, it's not private and public equity portfolios, it's not even going to be an index of equity. The only asset that I can use other than Bitcoin is US Treasuries everywhere in the world. If anybody ever decides to replace those, they'll replace them with Bitcoin. We should own both. Embrace Bitcoin, attract foreign capital. It's not just we're getting the 20th century money, we're getting the rest of the world's money. If I took all your money, I dropped you in Africa and I said, you got to invest in a diversified portfolio of private and public equity and real estate art in Africa, or you can put your money into the digital capital network and move it anywhere else at the speed of light, and I gave you a choice to punch the orange button or leave it in Africa for 100 years, you would punch the orange button. Everybody else in the world's figuring out the same thing right now. That's why countries will make laws against it. That's why the Chinese have export controls on their capital. All of the capital will flow into the U.S. But if you can't physically come to the U.S., the next best thing is you flow into the digital capital network and you get all the protections of the U.S. And finally, you embrace Bitcoin, you empower Americans. It's American companies with Bitcoin on the balance sheet. They're going to outlast, outperform, and outlive their competitors. So American institutions that are holding Bitcoin, they're going to enrich their shareholders. The beneficiaries are us. And the last point, with the appropriate digital assets framework, we can become the bankers to the world, right? When we export Bitcoin to the world, we're exporting our values, sovereignty, sound money, integrity, property rights. When we export digital currency, we're literally exporting our currency. If we create other digital securities or digital tokens, we'll be exporting our companies, our ideas, our securities, our financial products to the world. We can dominate this industry. So how should the U.S. pursue a Bitcoin strategy? Well, Senator Lummis has given us a clear guideline with the Bitcoin Act in Nashville in July. And what the Bitcoin Act said, it said, let's acquire 1 million Bitcoin over a 5-year period in a programmatic, disciplined fashion, transparent to all. And so let's consider the consequences of this strategy. Well, first of all, last week, the president signed the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve Act order. If we hold that 200,000 Bitcoin for the next 20 years, even though you see a flat line on the screen, the flat line is worth $3 trillion. So that's the value of doing nothing. Sometimes people think that you have to do something to make money. Sometimes the absence of doing awful and stupid things is making money. doing stuff is highly overrated if the stuff is trading or selling your Bitcoin. The Lummis bill would acquire a million Bitcoin or 1.2 million Bitcoin. If you look at the consequences of that over the time frame, it's worth $16 trillion to the nation. In this case, there's a bit of reflexivity. If the United States starts to more aggressively stockpile Bitcoin, it's going to accelerate the growth of the network. It's going to accelerate capital flowing in the network. It's going to increase and expand the overall digital capital network. If we move to a triple max strategy, you'll end up with 4 million Bitcoin. That's worth $73 trillion to America. And of course, President Trump has laid out a guideline. We should be the superpower. If you want a superpower strategy, here's a superpower strategy. Acquire Bitcoin consistently. By the way, over what time frame? Consistently daily between now and the 0.99. 0.99 is January of the year 2035, the point at which 99% of the Bitcoin supply has been mined. The asset becomes effectively capped for all practical purposes because the last 1% comes out over 100 years. 0.99 between now and then, you've got 10 years for the digital gold rush. You should get your Bitcoin before there's no more Bitcoin for you. And you can see here, in this strategy, we acquire it consistently, and then we use surpluses from the U.S. government to continue to save in Bitcoin. It's worth $106 trillion to the United States. And so what does that look like? The Lummis plan, which is grand, is modest in some ways, and a modest strategic Bitcoin reserve plan neutralizes the national debt. Sometimes doing modest things are actually brilliant as long as you do the thing. It's like the people that bought just a little bit of Bitcoin in 2012. It was a modest investment. It made them billionaires. A modest thing 20 years in advance is a brilliant thing. If you're more aggressive, the triple max plan negates the national debt. The superpower plan creates a global superpower. We bought 78% of the United States for $40 million. $40 million purchased nearly 80% of this country. Think about it for a second. Bitcoin is the greatest opportunity of the 21st century, right? It's worth anywhere from $3 trillion to $106 trillion, depending upon how programmatic and aggressive we want to pursue this opportunity. These opportunities don't come along often. This is the once-in-a-century opportunity. And as Donald Trump has said, never sell your Bitcoin. And I'll leave you with the final thought. What happens if we allow another nation to claim title to Bitcoin superpower? If we don't claim it, we give them control of the network. We give them all the wealth in the world. We risk being impoverished and imperiled by a hostile nation that controls all the world's digital energy. You could have clung to your glass beads when the world went to the gold standard. You could have clung to your steam engines when the world went to internal combustion. You know, you could have kept your wood-burning stoves when Rockefeller offered you petroleum. We could have dismissed nuclear power. We once had another project. We had a Manhattan project. It was a large investment in nuclear energy. Do you want to control the world's digital energy? Because the digital economy will run on digital energy. The choice is ours, either prosperity or poverty in the 21st century. Bitcoin is manifest destiny for America. Thank you.